Building an organizational trust, a landscape of trust for the purpose, performance, and possibility is very essential to travel in the path to scale up excellence. The secret to any high performing team is trust. This may seem like a no brainer, but trust is easy to take for granted, especially organizational trust. However, great your business strategy is, you will go far only when your employees develop faith in the organization and its future. Especially now, as you adapt, organizational trust is critical to navigating each day, both in the short term strategy and long term plan. In this talk, we will explore the underlying drivers of trust in the workplace. What is an organizational trust? Let us discuss. An organizational trust is to be between two parties, that is management and the employees, management and the other executive part of it. It is easy to envision trust at the team level. You trust your employee to get this task done by this day. You can count on a manager to provide feedback or peer to help the deliverable. But organizational trust is broader and arguably harder to define. At its simplest form, organizational trust is the confidence of your workforce in the actions of your company. This may include confidence in managers or individual team members. It also extends to organizational important factors like the company's mission, senior leadership's vision, the organization's culture and values, workplace diversity, inclusion and equality, ethics and fairness of processes. Once again, I repeat the last one, ethics and fairness of processes. Not all characteristics of trust manifest with the same frequency. After all, you likely won't question your trust in senior leadership as often as you evaluate your team's ability to hit a deadline. But it does not mean the former's any less important than the latter. If anything, organizational trust means having confidence in both your short and long term future. After all, an employee is not content with their manager or team, they may not last long. But if they develop confidence in the organization itself, they won't leave either. And they almost certainly put in maximum effort while they are there. The more you can do to boost confidence in all aspects of the employee experience, more tightly knit your organization is. Why is organizational trust very important? How to build it? This particular aspect now we'll go for. When looking to build trust, one of the first steps is to assess your organizational culture. This is very, very important feature for any analytical aspect of an organization. It has to develop a proper system with keen observers and senior-most people who are not biased to assess the organizational culture. Is the company fostering a culture of trust? If not, look for always to encourage behaviors and reward actions that help accomplish this goal. This is very, very important to build a proper culture in an organization. Your company values are a great vehicle for this. By defining the values every employee should strive to uphold, you create clear guidelines for the work to be done. This helps eliminate uncertainty while creating a strong sense of purpose. Of course, culture change takes time. As you build trust from top down, also look to build it from the bottom up. In remote times, that means providing leaders with ample resources to support their teams, including, perhaps most importantly, you will want to help managers to develop their emotional intelligence. When face to face interaction is so limited, it is easy to manage all employees identically, but not all employees enjoy being managed in the same way. We have to build the trust in your organization through care. There are several important points we have to take into consideration point wise in building the trust in the organization with all care. Communicate regularly. This is number one. You can't have trust without communication. It is that simple. Teams who know their goals, tasks, and greater purpose, and who have stronger relationships and awareness of others, are more likely to cooperate with each other. To get to that point as a team, it requires both informal and formal communication, such as regular team check ins, messaging, or stopping by co-workers' desks to chat about work related and non work related topics. This freedom is essential. These forms of frequent positive communication are the building blocks of relationships that show your employees you not only care but you are listening and acting, which ultimately leads to building the trust. Avoid punitive people programs. Have you ever worked for a company where you felt like just a number, or worse, a health risk? Most employees do not mean to make their people feel this way, but punitive HR technology can destroy the trust. With the click of a mouse, for example, avoid well being programs that penalize employees for smoking or increasing their BMI. Instead, empower them to focus on the areas of well being that matter to them. Maybe it's mental health or getting their finances in order. It's all connected, and improving in one area can lead to improvements in others. The real incentive of these programs should be the feeling of improvement at work and life. For platforms that have social elements like commenting and chat, you might feel compelled to monitor for negativity or workplace policy complaints. But these approaches send a bold message of I don't trust you. Look for ways to track for blatant misuse, but give your employees the benefit of the doubt. They will notice and trust will follow. Create norms of trust. Organizations can create norms and cultures of trust by weaving care into the daily interactions of their employees. Trust building opportunities can come in many forms, such as providing spaces and events for employees to develop interpersonal relationships, advocating and acting on inclusive practices, providing flexibility in when and where work happens, or incorporating policies and procedures that include employees in organizational decision making. This is a very important point because the worker, a junior manager, starting from top to bottom the line, they must feel that they are associated in the decision making and they are part of the decision making. Within organizations, trust is a steadfast belief that individuals, managers, and leaders are transparent with care and value one another. Before you jump to conclusions on how to enhance trust in your organization, take a step back and think about the concept of trust first. In what cases is trust working for your organization or against? Are you authentically demonstrating care for employees? Be mindful of your rollout plan and make it an intention, more than an intention, but a standard at your company. There are definitely enemies in the process of building this trust, especially absolute trust between individuals, workers, between the company management, senior management, junior management, etc., in a typical hierarchy where modern management organizations are going on. Try an experiment sometime. Ask a group of managers in your company whether they and their closest managerial colleagues are trustworthy. If so, how they know? Most will claim that they themselves are trustworthy and that most of other colleagues are as well. Their answers to the second half of the question will likely to reflect their beliefs about personal integrity. You will hear things like, I am straight with my people, or she keeps her promises. These sort of things can be analyzed in various groups, their views, and the way they are communicating about their colleagues will give you an ample opportunity to analyze, otherwise, it becomes an enemy in building the trust. Trust within an organization is further complicated by the fact that people use the word trust to refer to three different kinds. First is strategic trust, second is personal trust, third is organizational trust. Now we are more emphasizing on this building of organizational trust. The trust people have not in any individual but in the company itself. Are processes well designed, consistent, and fair? Does the company make good on its promises? Clearly, these three types of trust are distinct, but they are linked with important each other. Even though I have taken organizational trust first, but the other two, the strategic trust and the personal trust, they are the stepping stones in building the absolute organizational trust. Every time an individual manager violates the personal trust of direct reports, for example, their organizational trust will be shaken. So, enemies of trust, both big and small, have to be taken into consideration and they have to be evaluated in order to avoid the stumbling blocks in building the absolute trust in an organization. The enemy number one we will discuss inconsistent messages. One of the fastest moving destroyers of trust is inconsistent messages. They can occur anywhere in an organization, from senior managers on down. They can also occur extremely in the way of an organization communicates with its employees and other people. Either way, the repercussions are significant. Consider the manager who tells employees in May that he is going to hold weekly brown bag lunch meetings to discuss relevant issues in the marketplace. He implies that enthusiastic participation will be reflected in employees' performance reviews, but the enthusiastic participation will be reflected in employees' reviews. These cancels the lunch the second, fourth, and fifth weeks because of his travel schedule. In week 7, he drops the idea entirely and he will say, in the summer, he was really can't count on a good turnout. It is not correct. That means the message is inconsistent, the planning is inconsistent. Senior executives often communicate inconsistent messages and priorities to various parts of the organization. Such sort of things, they create a bad atmosphere in the minds of the employees, and definitely they will become enemies to the building of absolute organizational trust. Another important point is inconsistent standards. If employees believe that an individual manager or the company plays favorites, their trust will be eroded. Employees keep score relentlessly. Suppose that a company's offices in one city are palatial and in another city employees make do with cramped cubicles. Local real estate prices most likely drive local decisions. But the people who end up with the warrants feel slighted nonetheless. Or suppose that the top took the new vice president of marketing out to lunch when he was promoted 2 months ago, but failed to do this same when a new head of IT was appointed the last week. This sort of discrimination, inconsistent standards create an ill feeling in the minds of the junior executives, middle management people, and the workmen. That will be the worst enemy for building of the organizational trust. Another important point which I firmly believe is the number one enemy in building the organizational trust is misplaced benevolence. Once again, I repeat, misplaced benevolence. Managers know they must do something about the employees who regularly steals, cheats, or humiliates co-workers. But most problematic behavior is subtler than that, and most managers have a hard time to addressing it. Consider incompetence. Anyone who has spent time in business has encountered at least one person who is simply and sadly so out of his league that everyone is stupefied and he is in the position at all. His colleagues wonder why his supervisors don't do something. His direct reports learn to work around him, but it is a daily struggle because the person in question is not harming anyone or anything on purpose. His supervisor is reluctant to punish him, but incompetence destroys value and it destroys all three kinds of the trust which we have discussed already. And some more points we discuss how they will become stumbling blocks in building up absolute organizational trust. False feedback. This is very detrimental to the organization. When incompetent or otherwise unsuitable person is let go, managers often face wrongful termination suits. Look at these performance reviews. The supposed victim says they are great, and he is right. The performance reviews are great. The problem is that they are relies on which feedback. If the feedback itself is a false one, then definitely evaluation will become a false one. And it creates a bad feeling in the minds of the workmen, and the entire culture will be spoiled and they will become enemy. Failure to trust others. Trusting others can be difficult, especially for a perfectionist or a workaholic. On top manager, we worked with soft and he was going to delegate several important responsibilities. He brought in a new person at a senior level, but he was simply unable to trust to do this work. After a few weeks, he began managing around and issuing directives about things he had supposedly delegated and generally making a life miserable. Eventually, the manager's hoarding behavior left him isolated and hobbled. This sort of behavior, this sort of environment also is the biggest enemy for building the trust. Another point I would like to mention is elephants in the parlor. Some situations are so painful, charged, that it is easier to pretend they do not exist. But we are talking about when someone has been fired abruptly and no one mentions it the next day that the regular staff meeting. We are talking about when an outrageous rumor finds its way to the office yet no one ever discusses it openly, even in private senior management meetings. Don't ignore things that you know everyone is whispering, but behind closed doors. Bring such issues out into open. Explain them briefly and answer questions as best you can. Don't be afraid to say, I am sorry. I can offer more detail because this would violate confidence. The last but not the least, very important enemy in building of absolute trust is rumor. Rumors in a vacuum. When a company is in the throes of complex initiative, a new product launch, say or new expansion or any other thing, analysis of a product or a project line that has been underperforming, there are ample opportunities for trust to be break down. Employees know that something important is going on, but if they do not know the full story, several rumors will be spread in the vacuum. That rumors circulate and in corporate life are common, and distrust thrives in a vacuum. What can you do? Be as upfront as possible, even if that means telling employees you can't say for certain what is going to happen, and be aware that the less you say, the more likely you are to be misinterpreted. In spite of that, try to be transparent and communicate the workman without any hurdle. Let the transparency prevail. That will definitely help in building the trust. So, we have discussed how to build up trust within the organization, and different level of responsibilities have to be entrusted. We have discussed the enemies of the trust, how they interfere into the building activity, and above all, I would like to communicate to all the young managers, building trust from lower level. A small group leader shall take initiative in building trust in his team, then a higher team, then further a higher team. It should go up to the level of top management. It is the trust which combines, which will be the force, which will be the connecting force, which will be the well knit force as an organization for expansion and any further development. So, building up of organizational trust is very, very important and plays a pivotal role in the development of organization. Thank you.